It's the Wednesday morning first episode on Legal AF, so it must be about Trump-enomics. We got a couple of major new developments. One, we've got Donald Trump picking a right MAGA wing partisan, one of the contributors to Project 2025, the most partisan of partisans, to be his nonpartisan, independent commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Independent, reliable statistics about the economy. Say goodbye. Rest in peace. Let's have a moment of silence because now we're going to have E.J. Antoni. E.J. Antoni, sure, he's got a degree in economics from some university in Illinois, but he's not a statistician. He doesn't understand how the Bureau of Labor Statistics works. He's a critic for Donald Trump on the outside. And every time, for me, that I always know who Donald Trump's going to pick to fill a spot when they appear on a friendly podcast just hours before, because E.J. Antoni appeared on Steve Bannon's podcast to criticize the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and a couple hours later, he was picked to head that Bureau of Labor Statistics. They're starting to cook the books, and the chief chef's going to be E.J. Antoni. That's one thing I'm going to talk about on this hot take. The second thing I'm going to talk about are the terrible inflation numbers that have just come out. Can't cook all the books, Donald. And a sort of a canary in the coal mine. We've got some terrible data coming out of Vegas, which shows the impact of Donald Trump's immigration, tariffs, terrible pricing policies, and tourism all coming to a head. And usually when something like Las Vegas fails, that means the economy is in for a nosedive. I'm Michael Popok. You're on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button on this Wednesday morning. Help us help you. Seriously, no paywall, no corporate parrot telling us what to say, but we need your help. Go back out, hit that subscribe button. It really does help us. All right, let's start with the inflation data, and then I'll round it out with the chief cook and bottle washer for Donald Trump, Dr. E.J. Antoni. All right, let's start with inflation. It's terrible. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, about 2 weeks ago, had an eyebrow-raising comment. He said, now this is the Trump economy. He owns it. I agree. That means he owns all the terrible data coming out as well. And what we have for inflation is that it's worse than we thought. It's 2.7% inflation year over year, meaning if you went to the supermarket with your basket of goods, now in August of 2025, you'd be 3.1% short at the cash register. You'd have to go find another 3.1% to pay. Because the core inflation, which is really what matters to people, food and energy and things like that, that's up even more. And we're up 0.3% just from July. So if you showed up in July with your basket of goods and now you're there in August and you push it up to the cash register, they're going to say, you're short 0.3%, please. That's what this economy is. And we're nowhere near the benchmark rate that the Federal Reserve is really focused on in order to cut rates, which is 2%. 2%, we're at 3.1%. Now, Donald Trump's cooking a lot of the books, and he's trying to take control of a lot of the statistical inputs, and he's trying to deny statistical inputs to the Federal Reserve by underfunding, defunding. A lot of that Doge defunding was statistics and economic data coming out of the government. He doesn't want it to be reliable. He wants it to be cooked. He only likes when the numbers go up for him, not down for him. I mean, during the first Trump administration, he had job reports where they revised them up in his favor. There was no complaint there. That's the nature of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They're trying to balance the immediacy of giving out some numbers and data for people to rely on with the understanding that they may have to, for accuracy's sake, make some corrections a month or two or three later. A lot of the data that comes into the Bureau of Labor Statistics is voluntary, and not every state and every economic region participates. They don't have to. I mean, I think post-COVID, the number's like only 43% of the economic units and states and governments and everything even supply the data to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so they have to do statistical modeling, of which Dr. E.J. Antoni, MAGA Heritage Foundation guy, knows nothing. All right, we'll come back to him in a minute. Let's turn to Vegas. Vegas is not doing well. I don't know how to put this for a number of reasons. Let's start with Canada and our friends, the Maple Midas, the Maple Legal AFers. You are understandably turning your back on Trump and therefore to America on tourism. You got a 35% tariff against you. Canada, you wouldn't know it by the way we mistreat them, or Donald Trump mistreats Canadians and the Canadian economy and the Canadian collegiality with America, but they are the number one tourist in America, in Vegas as well. And if you remove Canada from the mix in tourism, it's already predicted based on independent tourism and visitor bureaus that there's going to be a $13 billion loss of tourism dollars this year alone under Donald Trump. See, that's for those that voted for Donald Trump. You voted to remove $13 billion from the economy, mainly led by Canada. Now, Vegas, 6 months in a row, has had declining tourism numbers month after month after month. Geez, what does that 6 months correlate with? Right. The first months of the Trump administration. Vegas's decline is substantial. It's not like 1 or 2,000. In June alone, June compared to June of 2024, 400,000 less tourists spending money in Las Vegas. An 11.3% drop. Why? Canada is now taken out of the mix, and people's consumer spending of what we call discretionary income, meaning after you're done paying for the things that keep you alive, the money you have left over for, if you have any money left over, for discretionary spending, like gym membership or going to Vegas or, some streaming service or whatever, that number is substantially down, which means you don't have an extra a shekel in your pocket to go to Vegas. And so Vegas is hit by that. Then there's the tourism scare. It's not just the Canadians who are legal, who with their, coming across the border with their passports, who are not coming. It's a lot of people who are saying, you know what, do I really need to put up with being stopped and frisked and asked questions at the airport by National Guardsmen or the or ICE? Do I really need to put up with that? Maybe my visa, maybe I don't have enough pages left in my passport. Maybe my visa is whatever. I don't need to deal with this. I'm not going. Or I'm okay, but some member of my family may have a little bit of a muddied immigration status, so we're not going. So take that off the charts. Then tariffs. Countries being hit with tariffs. The tourists don't want to come to this country. That's another thing. And prices are going up. And as prices go up, and that's part of the inflation numbers I just gave you, as the tariffs start getting baked in, you think 3.1% increase year over year is terrible? Wait till you see when the fully baked tariffs end up in your consumer prices and my consumer prices. It's going to be pushing 4%. And that also cuts down on consumer confidence and the ability to say, let's spend the weekend or the week in Las Vegas. Generally, when Vegas suffers, that is a bellwether, that is a clarion call that it's going to impact the rest of the economy. As Vegas goes, so goes other tourist markets like Miami and New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and the rest, as we gear up to host the World Cup and the Olympics. Who wants to go to those with federal troops on the streets, ICE chasing human beings through factory farms, churches, schools, and I presume sporting events? Who wants to do that? Nobody. So this is all coming to a head now. Now let me turn to Dr. Antoni. Before I do, have I mentioned we could use a subscriber base to grow? Hit the free subscribe button on this Wednesday morning on Legal AF. EJ Antoni. If only I didn't know as much as I do about you. You are an economist, for sure, but you are also a major contributor to Project 2025. You've been a major critic of everything Democratic. You are the opposite of what's required for the Bureau of Labor Statistics and confidence in the marketplace and the global marketplace. We need an independent, nonpartisan person that's not carrying the water for the president. Instead, look what we got. He might as well, let me put it this way. He might as well have chosen Marjorie Taylor Greene, right, to be his Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner. He wanted, as you know, a loyalist, and he got a loyalist in EJ Antoni. Doesn't mean he knows anything about the statistical model. And of course, my ears perked up when I heard him say on a recent podcast, there's a better way to collect and process and distribute data. That sounds like a euphemism for we're going to cook the books. And the problem, people who really understand what that department is all about and the importance of it. They say that he doesn't understand in his background, his training or anything, survey design or revision procedures or policies, which are going to be terrible. In fact, let me play you a clip just before he was named. This was the tell that he was going to get named on Steve Bannon's show. Let's run that clip.
It was really exactly the opposite. Native-born Americans were largely left behind in that labor market. So much so, Natalie, that by the time Biden left office, you had fewer native-born Americans employed than before the pandemic. So all of the net job growth that we had over that time, it's reasonable to assume it was all going to those foreign-born workers, which were just being imported en masse by the last administration. And look, the labor market is a market. It's right there in the name. And so we have to remember, even though people are unique, people are not a regular economic commodity, the basic laws of economics still apply here. When you see those kinds of drastic increases in supply, it puts downward pressure on prices. And in the labor market, we call that wages.
Okay. He already knows he has the job. I don't know why he's going on Bannon. If I see anybody on Bannon or on Newsmax, like the guy that got appointed to the Federal Reserve last week, I know that they're going to be Donald Trump's pick. We should just catalog who's out there promoting Donald Trump's failed policies. That's the next person picked for an opening. And then lastly, he talked about on another podcast a while ago, he talked about, get this, he doesn't like the Bureau of Labor Statistics because they did revisions, but they should have done revisions faster because it would have showed that Biden's administration wasn't doing well in the economy. But he credits the BLS for making the revisions, so he undermines his own argument that the revisions should never be made, but doesn't like the fact that the revisions weren't announced fast enough. I mean, I don't know if he was asleep, but Biden and Kamala Harris did not win the election. Trump did. But I don't think you can have it both ways. You can't criticize the Bureau of Labor Statistics and say, you can't rely on them, they're completely unreliable, and then say, let me make my argument relying on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Let me show that clip.
June was a great month. I would say President Trump really hit a home run when it came to this report, because not only did we have a good headline number, you're absolutely right, Derek, we did, but the internals of the report were also very, very good. You mentioned one of them, which was that the previous 2 months were revised up. That's a welcome change from what we saw under the Biden administration, where we routinely got a great number, a blockbuster number initially, and then in the subsequent months, that number would be revised down. And then when it was time to do an annual revision, the figures were revised down even further. In other words, millions of jobs that we thought we had, it turns out were never there in the first place. And today we're seeing the opposite. That's a great change.
But Biden got the headlines that he wanted, right?
You're right, exactly. And of course, no one pays attention, Brian, to the revisions months later.
So I wanted you to get a handle on who's the chief cook now for the cook in the books. Good news is there's lots of economic data that Donald Trump can't get his grubby little hands on, and he can't control because it's not controlled by the federal government. There's whole institutes within universities, although we know he's attacking universities, that look at seasonal and other economic data. There's independent visitor and tourism bureaus. There's manufacturing associations, supply chain associations, goods and services associations, and they produce their own data because they do a good job of polling their members and then releasing the data, and they're independent of this Trump administration. Because anything that comes through them, that cracked prism, is completely unreliable. And the market's going to understand that. The global market, the financial services market, the Wall Street market, brokers and traders, they're going to understand that all of this is unreliable. And they're going to find their data somewhere else. Let's be frank. They're not going to buy what Donald Trump is selling. They're not going to pick up what Donald Trump is laying down, especially through Dr. E.J. Antoni. I'm glad you're on Legal AF. This is what we do every morning. First slot, unless there's some urgent issue, is always about Trump-enomics, putting on my Wall Street hat here on Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok. Take a moment, come to Legal AF Substack, hit the subscribe button there. Legal AF, the podcast, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. And of course, my new podcast, The Intersection, Tuesday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, and then wherever you get audio podcasts from. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.